The sun was shining bright that morning, casting a golden glow over the city park. People were setting up tents, banners, and food stalls for the charity event that happened once every year. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and children ran around holding balloons, their faces painted with stars and butterflies. At the center of it all stood a tall man in an expensive suit, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. His name was Mr. Harrison Cole, a well-known millionaire who owned several businesses across the country. He was the main sponsor of the event, and his presence always drew the media and the crowd. Mr. Cole was a man used to power and attention. Wherever he went, people greeted him with respect, not because they loved him, but because they feared or admired his wealth. His face often appeared in newspapers and on television, showing him shaking hands with other powerful people. But behind that smile, he carried a pride that made him believe that money could buy anything, even happiness. That day, he arrived at the park with his assistants and photographers following him. He waved at the crowd, posed for pictures, and smiled for the cameras. He gave a short speech about helping poor children and building a better future. The audience clapped, but for many his words felt empty, like they were spoken more for the cameras than for the children standing nearby. As the activities began, Mr. Cole walked around with a cup of coffee in his hand, observing everything. There were food stalls, a small stage for performances, and a corner where children were drawing and playing music. Some were singing, some dancing, and a few playing instruments that looked old and worn out. That was when his eyes caught sight of a small boy standing near the stage, holding a violin. The boy was around 10 years old, thin, and wearing clothes that looked too big for his small body. His shoes were torn and his hair was a bit messy, but his eyes were calm and full of focus. He was quietly tuning his violin, not looking at anyone else. Mr. Cole raised an eyebrow and said to one of his assistants, "Who let that boy in here? He looks like he picked that violin out of the trash." The assistant gave a nervous laugh but said nothing. Mr. Cole walked closer, curiosity mixed with amusement. The boy looked up briefly, nodded politely, and went back to checking the strings on his violin. "What are you doing, kid?" Mr. Cole asked, his tone sharp but playful. The boy looked up again and replied softly, "I'm going to play in the charity performance, sir." Mr. Cole chuckled, looking around to see if anyone else heard him. "You play? That old thing?" He pointed to the violin with a smirk. Some nearby guests turned to look, their curiosity caught by the millionaire's loud voice. "Yes, sir," the boy answered simply. Mr. Cole laughed and said loudly enough for others to hear, "Tell you what, boy, if you can play something that impresses me, maybe I'll adopt you. What do you say?" The crowd chuckled at his joke, thinking he was just teasing the boy. The boy didn't smile. He looked at Mr. Cole with steady eyes and said, "I'll try my best, sir." There was something about the boy's calm tone that made the laughter fade a little. Even Mr. Cole stopped smiling for a second, but he quickly brushed it off. All right, he said, clapping his hands once. "Let's hear it then. Show us what you've got." The crowd began to gather around. Some people whispered, others brought out their phones to record. The boy stepped onto the small wooden stage and stood there quietly for a moment. The sun caught the side of his face, and for a brief second he looked like he belonged there, even with his old violin. As he lifted the bow, his hands didn't shake. His posture was straight, and his expression changed from calm to focused. The noise around slowly faded until only the sound of the wind and distant laughter remained. He drew the bow across the strings, and a soft, gentle note filled the air. It wasn't loud or fancy, just pure and clear. Then came another note and another, forming a melody so simple yet so beautiful that people stopped talking and turned their full attention toward him. In that moment, the park became silent. The boy's small hands moved gracefully over the violin, his eyes half closed as if he was lost in a world only he could see. The music wasn't just sound, it was emotion flowing through every note. The melody rose and fell like waves, sometimes soft as a whisper, sometimes deep and full of sorrow. Even from a distance one could feel it, the story the boy was telling without words. It was a story of love, loss, and hope. Though no one knew his background, the feelings in his music spoke louder than any explanation could. People in the crowd felt something stirring inside them. A mother held her child closer. A young man looked down, remembering someone he had lost. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, caught off guard by the emotion filling the air. Mr. Cole stood frozen. His smirk was gone, The joke that had seemed funny moments ago now felt heavy and cruel. He didn't know why, but he couldn't take his eyes off the boy. The music touched something deep inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. The boy played for several minutes, his face calm but his eyes shining. When he finally stopped, the last note hung in the air like a soft echo. For a moment, no one clapped. The silence itself was the biggest applause he could receive. Then, slowly, people began to clap. Softly at first, then louder and louder until the whole park was filled with applause. Some even whistled, others cheered. A few had tears in their eyes. The boy looked up, slightly surprised, and gave a small, shy smile. He bowed gently and stepped off the stage. The crowd parted for him as if he was someone important. Mr. Cole was still standing there, his cup of coffee forgotten in his hand. His assistant whispered, "Sir, are you all right?" But he didn't respond. He just watched the boy walk toward the side of the stage where his small bag lay. The boy picked it up and started to walk away, his violin held carefully in his arms. Mr. Cole finally took a deep breath and said quietly, "What's his name?" The assistant shook his head. "I'm not sure, sir. I think he came from the orphanage group." "Orphanage?" Mr. Cole repeated, his eyes following the boy. Something about that word made his heart tighten a little. He looked around at the crowd, still clapping and cheering, and for once he didn't care about the cameras or the applause meant for him. As the boy disappeared into the crowd, Mr. Cole stood in silence. He had come to the park that morning thinking he was the one giving something, his money, his time, his presence. But now he felt like he had received something instead, something he couldn't put into words yet. The sun had started to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. The laughter and music returned, but for Mr. Cole everything felt a little different now. The sound of the violin still echoed in his mind, soft but powerful, like a whisper that refused to fade. He didn't know the boy's story, but he wanted to. He didn't understand why that melody had affected him so deeply, but he couldn't ignore it. For the first time in years, the man who thought he had everything realized there was still something missing in his life, something that no amount of money could ever buy. As he stood there, watching the sunset behind the trees, Mr. Cole quietly said to himself, "I need to find that boy." The sound of the violin still lingered in the air long after the boy had left the stage. The people slowly went back to their conversations, but the feeling his music left behind stayed in their hearts. Mr. Cole stood still for a while, lost in thought. His assistant called him a few times, but he didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was quieter than usual. "Find out which orphanage that boy came from," he said. His assistant nodded and quickly walked away to ask the event organizers. Mr. Cole walked toward a bench near the stage and sat down. He had attended hundreds of charity events before, but never had one touched him this way. The image of the little boy standing there, with that old violin and steady eyes, replayed in his mind again and again. He remembered how confident the boy looked when he said, "I'll try my best." There had been no fear, no doubt, just quiet determination. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the park began to empty. Families left with smiling children and volunteers packed up the tents. Mr. Cole stayed until the last of the stalls was taken down. His assistant returned, slightly out of breath, holding a small piece of paper. "Sir, his name is Eli," the assistant said. "He lives at the Hillside Orphanage. They brought a few children here for the event. He left right after performing." Mr. Cole took the paper and looked at the address written on it. For some reason, he felt something stir inside him, a kind of restlessness he hadn't felt in years. Without saying another word, he stood up and walked toward his car. "We're going there," he said firmly. The drive to the orphanage took nearly an hour. The roads grew narrower as they moved away from the city center. The tall buildings faded behind them, replaced by small houses and fields. The car finally stopped in front of an old brick building with fading paint. A simple sign above the gate read, "Hillside Children's Home." It wasn't large, but it looked clean and well cared for. Mr. Cole stepped out of the car and looked around. A few children were playing in the yard, their laughter echoing in the cool evening air. When they saw the expensive car, they stopped for a moment, curious. A kind-looking woman came out from the front door, wiping her hands on her apron. "Good evening," she said politely. "How can I help you, sir?" "I'm looking for a boy named Eli," Mr. Cole said. "He played the violin at the charity event today. The woman's face brightened. "Ah, yes, Eli. He's one of our most talented children," she said warmly. "He's in his room right now. Would you like to meet him?" Mr. Cole nodded. The woman led him through a narrow hallway filled with drawings and colorful paper cutouts made by the children. Everything felt simple but full of love. She stopped near a door and knocked gently. "Eli, there's someone here to see you." The door opened slowly and the boy stepped out, looking surprised to see the man from the park standing there. His violin was in his hand and his eyes widened slightly, but he didn't speak. "Hello?" Mr. Cole said, his voice softer than before. "You played very well today." "Thank you, sir," Eli replied quietly. Mr. Cole looked at the small room behind him. It was clean but plain, a bed, a small desk, and a shelf with a few books and toys. A drawing of a man, woman, and little boy holding hands hung above the bed. He guessed it was Eli's family. "I was wondering," Mr. Cole said after a pause. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Eli looked down at his violin and gently ran his fingers over the strings. "My father taught me," he said softly. Before he went away." The boy's voice broke slightly at the end, and Mr. Cole felt a lump in his throat. "I see," he said quietly. "He must have been a good teacher." Eli nodded. "He used to say that music is how we speak to the heart when words aren't enough." He looked up then, his eyes steady again. "I try to remember that when I play." The room went silent for a moment. Mr. Cole had met many musicians before, people who played for fame, money, or applause. But this boy played for something far purer. It made him think about his own life. He had everything, money, cars, a big house, but he couldn't remember the last time he had felt something real. After a few moments, the woman from the orphanage smiled kindly and said, "Eli, why don't you play something for our guest?" Eli looked at Mr. Cole for a moment, then nodded. He sat on the edge of his bed, lifted the violin, and began to play a short, gentle tune. It wasn't the same one from the park. This one was softer, more peaceful, almost like a lullaby. The sound filled the small room and wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Mr. Cole closed his eyes for a second, letting the melody wash over him. When Eli finished, he smiled shyly and put the violin down. "That was beautiful," Mr. Cole said quietly. "You have a gift." "Thank you," Eli said again. His voice was small, but there was confidence in it. Mr. Cole turned to the woman. "Who takes care of his musical training?" She sighed and said, "Mostly himself. We can't afford formal lessons, but he practices every day. Sometimes local musicians donate old strings or sheet music. He never complains. He's a special boy." Mr. Cole nodded slowly. Something about her words stayed with him. A boy who had lost everything, yet still found a reason to smile and share beauty with the world. He envied that strength. He turned back to Eli and said, "You know, I meant what I said today about helping you. Not the joke, but something real. Would you let me sponsor your music education?" Eli looked surprised. "You mean lessons?" "Yes," Mr. Cole said with a small smile. "Proper lessons, instruments, anything you need. You deserve that." The woman looked touched, and Eli's eyes widened with disbelief. "But why me?" he asked quietly. Mr. Cole thought for a moment before answering. "Because sometimes the right note reaches the right heart," he said. "And today your music reached mine." Eli didn't know what to say. He just looked at the man in front of him, unsure if it was real. Finally, he nodded slightly. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best," Mr. Cole smiled. "That's all I ask." Before leaving, Mr. Cole spoke with the head of the orphanage about arranging lessons and new instruments for Eli and the other children. He didn't just want to help one child. He wanted to help the whole place. The woman thanked him again and again, tears of gratitude in her eyes. As he walked back to his car, Mr. Cole felt something different, something lighter. For years, he had written checks for charity without thinking much about it. But now, for the first time, it felt personal. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about connection. On the way back home, he couldn't stop thinking about Eli's words. Music is how we speak to the heart when words aren't enough. It echoed in his mind over and over. He realized how long it had been since he had truly spoken from his own heart. When he reached his mansion that night, everything looked the same. Grand, beautiful, but strangely empty. He walked through the wide halls lined with paintings and expensive furniture, but none of it made him feel anything. The sound of the violin still played softly in his mind. He stood by the large window in his study, looking out at the city lights below. He thought about his own childhood, how different it had been. His parents had worked hard but had little money. He had learned early that success meant never being weak, never showing emotions. But now he wondered if he had misunderstood what real strength was. That night, for the first time in a long while, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the boy with the old violin, playing in that small room with nothing but passion in his heart. Something inside Mr. Cole had shifted. He didn't know where this new feeling would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change, and it all began with a song played by a boy who had nothing but heart. As he finally closed his eyes, a faint smile appeared on his face. For the first time in years, he felt peace. The next morning, Mr. Cole woke up earlier than usual. He couldn't shake the feeling that something important had changed inside him. As he stood by the window watching the sunrise, he thought again about the little boy with the violin. Eli's calm face and his quiet strength had left an impression deeper than anything money could buy. For the first time in years, Mr. Cole felt a kind of purpose he couldn't fully explain. He picked up his phone and made a few calls. Within hours, his staff began arranging everything needed for Eli's music education. He contacted one of the best music academies in the city and explained the situation. The director was surprised but moved by his story. "Of course," the director said. "We'll make an exception. The boy can start next week." By afternoon, Mr. Cole's car was once again parked outside Hillside Orphanage. The children recognized the car this time and ran toward the gate, their faces full of excitement. Eli stood near the doorway holding his violin case, unsure why Mr. Cole had come again so soon. When Mr. Cole stepped out, the head of the orphanage greeted him warmly. "You didn't have to come all the way here yourself, sir," she said kindly. "I wanted to," he replied. Then he turned to Eli and smiled. "I have some good news for you." Eli blinked, curious but quiet. Mr. Cole knelt slightly so they were at eye level. "You're going to start at the City Music Academy next week. They've agreed to take you as a student. You'll have lessons, instruments, everything you need." For a moment, Eli didn't move. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The other children gasped and started whispering to each other in excitement. The head of the orphanage put a hand to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. "Me?" Eli finally whispered. "You mean, really?" "Yes," Mr. Cole said with a small smile. "Really?" "You earned it." Eli's face lit up with a shy but genuine smile, the kind that could melt even the coldest heart. "Thank you, sir," he said softly. "I'll work hard. I promise." "I know you will," Mr. Cole said, "and I'll be there to see your first lesson." Over the next few days, things moved quickly. The orphanage helped gather Eli's things, and Mr. Cole's staff arranged transportation and supplies. New clothes, music sheets, and a brand new violin were delivered to the orphanage. But Eli refused to give up his old violin. He told Mr. Cole, "This one is special. It was my father's. I'll keep it with me even if I use the new one for class." Mr. Cole nodded in understanding. He respected that. It reminded him of how he used to hold on to small things from his own parents before life became so busy and filled with meetings and money. The day of Eli's first class arrived. The academy stood tall and bright, with large glass windows and banners showing famous musicians who had trained there. Eli walked in nervously, holding his violin close. Mr. Cole walked beside him, wearing a calm smile but feeling oddly nervous himself. Inside, the director greeted them warmly and introduced Eli to his new teacher, a gentleman with gray hair and kind eyes named Mr. Bennett. He had been a violinist for more than 30 years and had taught many students, but when he saw Eli, he sensed something different. "So, you're the boy who played at the charity event?" Mr. Bennett asked kindly. "Yes, sir," Eli said softly. "I heard about it," the teacher said with a smile. "Well, let's see what you can do." Eli took a deep breath, lifted his violin, and began to play. It was the same melody he had played at the park, simple and pure. The sound filled the room, and Mr. Bennett listened carefully. When Eli finished, the teacher didn't speak for a moment. Then he said quietly, "You have a gift, my boy. Not just skill, but feeling. That's something no one can teach." Eli smiled shyly, and Mr. Cole felt a strange warmth in his chest. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. Watching the boy play made him feel alive again. From that day on, Eli's life began to change. Every morning, a car came to pick him up from the orphanage and take him to the academy. He practiced for hours, learning new techniques and songs. He struggled sometimes, but he never gave up. Mr. Cole visited often, bringing snacks for the children at the orphanage and sitting quietly during Eli's lessons whenever he could. The bond between the two grew naturally. Mr. Cole would often take Eli for lunch after class. They would sit at a small diner near the academy, eating sandwiches and talking about music, life, and dreams. Eli told stories about his parents, how his father used to play guitar and his mother loved to sing. He spoke of the nights when they would sit together, making up songs and laughing until it was time for bed. "Do you miss them?" Mr. Cole asked once, his voice gentle. Eli nodded. "Every day," he said quietly. "But when I play, it feels like they're still here, like they can hear me." Mr. Cole didn't reply right away. He just nodded slowly, feeling his heart tighten. There was so much wisdom and innocence in those words. He realized how much he had forgotten about love and family in his own pursuit of success. One day, as Eli was finishing his lesson, the director of the academy approached Mr. Cole. "He's special," the director said quietly. "Not just talented, there's something about his music that touches people. We have a recital coming up next month. It's small, but I'd like Eli to perform." Mr. Cole's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful news." When Eli heard about it, he was both nervous and excited. "What if I make mistakes?" he asked Mr. Cole. "Then you learn from them," Mr. Cole said with a smile. Every great musician started that way. The days leading up to the recital were filled with practice. Eli spent hours perfecting his piece. Sometimes Mr. Cole would sit beside him, listening quietly, offering encouragement when needed. The orphanage staff and children also cheered for him, proud of how far he had come. On the night of the recital, the academy hall was filled with parents, students, and guests. The stage was decorated with soft lights and the audience waited eagerly. Mr. Cole sat in the front row, feeling more nervous than he had ever been for any business deal. When Eli walked onto the stage, wearing a simple white shirt and black pants, holding his old violin, the hall went silent. He took a deep breath and began to play. The first few notes floated through the air like a whisper, then grew stronger, filled with warmth and emotion. The melody told a story of pain, love, loss, and hope. People leaned forward, drawn in by the purity of his sound. Even the teachers who had heard countless performances before were captivated. Mr. Cole felt tears sting his eyes. The same feelings he had felt in the park came rushing back, but this time they were stronger. He could see the transformation. The little boy who once stood uncertainly in front of a crowd was now standing tall, commanding every ear and heart in the room. When the last note faded, silence filled the hall. Then came the applause, loud, long, and full of admiration. People stood up, clapping, cheering. Eli looked stunned, then smiled shyly and bowed. Mr. Cole stood too, clapping harder than anyone else. Pride and emotion swelled in his chest. It wasn't just about talent anymore, it was about heart, courage, and the power of kindness. After the show, Eli ran up to him, eyes shining. "Did I do okay?" he asked breathlessly. "You did more than okay," Mr. Cole said with a soft laugh. "You were incredible." Eli grinned, clutching his violin close. "I played the song my father wrote," he said. "I think he would have liked it." Mr. Cole put a hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm sure he did, and so did everyone here." That night, as they drove back to the orphanage, neither of them spoke much. The car was quiet except for the sound of the road beneath the tires. But it was a peaceful silence. Both of them knew something had changed. When they arrived, the other children ran to greet Eli, hugging him and congratulating him. Mr. Cole watched from a distance, smiling. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something real, a family in a way. As he got back into his car, he looked at the sky, now dotted with stars. He thought about how strange life was, how a single encounter in a park could change everything. The boy he had once mocked had now become his greatest teacher, and though he didn't say it out loud yet, deep down, he knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger story for both of them. Weeks passed after the recital, but the memory of that night stayed fresh in everyone's mind. Eli had become somewhat of a local inspiration. The academy shared his story with a few newspapers, and soon people across the city were talking about the little boy from the orphanage whose music had moved an entire audience. But through all the attention, Eli stayed humble. He still spent time with the other children at the orphanage, teaching them songs, helping with chores, and smiling shyly whenever someone praised him. Mr. Cole visited more often now. What started as short visits turned into longer hours spent talking, reading, or simply sitting with the children. The staff noticed a change in him too. The man who used to walk with pride and distance now knelt down to help a child fix a toy, or shared stories about his own childhood. He laughed more. He smiled more. The walls of pride he had built around himself were slowly crumbling piece by piece. One afternoon he sat with Eli under the big oak tree in the orphanage yard. The air was calm and the sun shone through the leaves, casting soft shadows on the grass. Eli had his violin resting beside him, and Mr. Cole was holding a small box of sandwiches. "Tell me something," Mr. Cole said. "When you play, what do you think about?" Eli took a moment before answering. "Sometimes about my parents," he said quietly. "Sometimes about the kids here. But mostly, I think about feelings. When I play something sad, I try to remember how it felt to miss someone. When it's happy, I think about laughter." He smiled a little. "Music is like talking, just without words." Mr. Cole nodded slowly. "I used to think talking was about using the right words," he said. "But lately I've realized silence can say even more." Eli looked at him curiously. "You sound like a musician yourself." Mr. Cole laughed softly. "No, I can't play a single note. But maybe I'm learning to listen now." That afternoon, Eli played a new melody he'd been working on. It was lighter than his usual pieces, full of warmth and hope. Mr. Cole closed his eyes and listened. He didn't realize it, but a small smile had formed on his face as the music carried through the air. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about work, money, or business. He was simply there, present and alive. Days turned into weeks and their bond grew stronger. Mr. Cole began helping the orphanage more seriously. He funded repairs, new books, better meals, and even hired extra staff. But he did it quietly, without the usual media attention. This time he didn't want cameras or praise. He wanted to give back because it felt right. One day, the head of the orphanage approached him with a file in her hands. "Mr. Cole," she said gently, "I know this might sound sudden, but have you ever thought about adopting?" Mr. Cole froze for a moment. The question lingered in the air like a delicate note. He looked through the window where Eli was laughing with the other kids. The thought had crossed his mind many times, but he had never said it aloud. "I have," he said finally. "But I wasn't sure if he'd want that." The woman smiled kindly. "Why don't you ask him? You might be surprised." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mr. Cole found Eli sitting by the window polishing his violin. The golden light touched his face, and for a second Mr. Cole saw the reflection of something pure, something he had lost long ago. He sat beside him quietly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mr. Cole said, "You know, I used to think I had everything I wanted. But lately I've realized something's been missing." Eli looked up. "What's that?" "A reason," Mr. Cole said softly. "A reason to wake up and feel something real." He paused, taking a slow breath. "Eli, would you like to come live with me? Not as a student, but as family." Eli blinked, not sure if he heard correctly. "You mean, live with you?" Mr. Cole nodded. "Only if you want to. You'd have your own room, your lessons, everything. But most of all, you'd have someone who cares for you, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are." For a few seconds, Eli couldn't speak. His small hands tightened around the violin. His eyes filled with tears, but he tried to smile. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Cole said gently. "Just think about it. No pressure." Eli wiped his eyes quickly and nodded. "Can I think for a day?" Of course. That night Eli lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The other children were asleep, their soft breathing filling the quiet room. He thought about his parents, about the music they used to make together, and about how lonely he had felt after losing them. Mr. Cole's kindness had filled that emptiness little by little, but the idea of leaving the orphanage, the only home he'd known since then, scared him. The next morning he woke early and went to the yard. The air was cool and dew glistened on the grass. He took his violin and played a soft tune, one he used to play with his father. As the notes drifted into the morning air, he thought about everything Mr. Cole had done for him. The lessons, the encouragement, the warmth. It wasn't about luxury or gifts. It was about care, about family. Later that day, when Mr. Cole arrived, Eli ran to him with his violin in hand. "Sir," he said, catching his breath, "I've decided." Mr. Cole smiled gently. And? Eli looked up with bright eyes. I'd like to come with you. Mr. Cole's eyes softened and a genuine smile spread across his face. Then it settled. The paperwork took a few weeks, but soon everything was official. The day Eli moved into Mr. Cole's house, the staff had prepared everything: a cozy bedroom with a view of the garden, a small music corner with shelves for his instruments, and even a wall where he could hang his drawings. Eli walked through the halls wide-eyed, amazed at how big everything was. Do you like it? Mr. Cole asked. It's beautiful, Eli said softly. But it feels quiet, Mr. Cole chuckled. That's because it hasn't had any music yet. Eli smiled shyly and opened his violin case. He began to play a soft tune right there in the living room. The sound filled the house, reaching every corner. It was as if the walls themselves had been waiting for it. Mr. Cole stood still, listening, and realized that for the first time, the house didn't feel empty anymore. Days turned into weeks again, and life settled into a rhythm. Mornings began with breakfast together, afternoons with practice or schoolwork, and evenings with quiet talks or walks in the garden. Mr. Cole learned to cook simple meals just so they could eat together without the help of staff. Sometimes they'd sit by the piano and Eli would play while Mr. Cole listened with a cup of tea in his hand. One night, Eli played the same song he had performed at the recital. When he finished, he looked at Mr. Cole and said softly, "This one is for you." Mr. Cole smiled. "Why me?" "Because you heard me when no one else did," Eli said. "You saw me." Those words hit deeper than anything else. Mr. Cole felt a warmth rise in his chest, the kind that no success or wealth had ever given him. He realized how much this small boy had changed his life, not through grand gestures but through simple truth and kindness. As the weeks went by, their bond grew stronger. They became not just a guardian and a child, but true family. The laughter that had once been missing from Mr. Cole's home now filled every corner. The staff often smiled quietly when they passed by, hearing Eli's music echo through the halls. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Mr. Cole stood by the window, watching Eli play in the garden. He thought back to that first day in the park, the mocking words he had spoken and the melody that had silenced everyone. He felt a pang of shame but also gratitude. That day had changed everything. He whispered softly to himself, "You taught me what real wealth is." Outside, Eli laughed as he chased the falling leaves, his violin safely tucked under his arm. The sound of his laughter reached Mr. Cole's ears like the sweetest music he had ever heard. For the first time, both of them had found what they had been missing all along. Not money, not fame, but family. Months passed peacefully in the Cole household. The once cold mansion had turned into a warm and joyful home. Every corner that used to echo with silence now carried music and laughter. Eli had adjusted beautifully to his new life. He attended a nearby school, continued his violin lessons, and practiced every day. His teacher often said that Eli didn't just play music, he felt it. There was something different about the way his bow moved, as if every note carried a piece of his soul. Mr. Cole often watched him with quiet pride. Sometimes in the middle of his busy workday, he would find himself smiling just thinking about the boy's laughter, or the way he frowned when concentrating on a difficult tune. His priorities had changed completely. Meetings and deals no longer felt as important as spending time at home, helping Eli with homework or listening to his music. One afternoon, Eli received an invitation to perform at a national youth music competition. It was a huge opportunity. Musicians from all over the country would be there. When he showed the letter to Mr. Cole, his eyes widened with excitement. "This is wonderful, Eli. You have to go for it," he said. Eli hesitated. "Do you really think I can do it?" "I don't think," Mr. Cole said with a smile. "I know." For weeks the house was filled with music from morning to night. Eli practiced tirelessly, sometimes until his fingers ached. Mr. Cole often sat nearby reading or simply listening. He didn't give advice, he didn't need to. His presence alone encouraged Eli more than words could. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. The event was held in a large concert hall filled with hundreds of people. Musicians with polished instruments and shining shoes filled the backstage area. Eli clutched his old violin case nervously. It was the same one his father had given him, and though it looked worn, it was his most precious possession. Mr. Cole noticed his unease and knelt beside him. "Hey," he said softly. Just remember one thing. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to share what's in your heart. That's what makes you special. Eli took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. When his turn came, he walked onto the stage. The bright lights almost blinded him, but when he looked into the crowd and saw Mr. Cole sitting in the front row, smiling encouragingly, his fear melted away. He lifted the violin, closed his eyes, and began to play. The melody started slow, gentle, like a whisper. Then it grew stronger, more emotional, filling the hall with warmth and depth. The sound seemed to tell a story of loss, love, and new beginnings. People leaned forward in their seats, completely captivated. Some closed their eyes to feel the music more deeply. Even the judges exchanged glances, surprised by the emotion flowing from such a young performer. By the time Eli played the final note, the hall was silent for a few seconds. Then the audience erupted in applause. People stood on their feet, clapping and cheering. Eli lowered his bow, a little overwhelmed. He looked at Mr. Cole, who was standing too, clapping proudly with tears in his eyes. That night, when the results were announced, Eli won first place. But more than the trophy or the applause, what mattered most to him was the moment he ran into Mr. Cole's arms backstage. "You did it," Mr. Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it," Eli said, smiling through happy tears. News of his performance spread quickly. Newspapers wrote about the young violinist and the touching story behind him. Reporters wanted interviews, and invitations to perform poured in from different cities. Yet, despite all the attention, Eli remained humble. He still spent evenings playing in the garden, still helped his friends at the orphanage whenever he could, and still called Mr. Cole sir out of respect. Though Mr. Cole always told him, "You can just call me Dad." One evening, after dinner, they sat together by the fireplace. Eli was polishing his violin while Mr. Cole read a book. The firelight flickered softly across the room. After a moment, Eli looked up and asked, "Do you ever miss the old days?" Mr. Cole put down his book. "The old days? When you were alone, before me?" Mr. Cole smiled faintly. "I used to think I had everything I wanted back then. A big house, fancy cars, money. But the truth is, I was lonely. You changed that. You made this house a home." Eli's face softened. "You made me feel like I have a family again." Mr. Cole reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "And you always will." Time went by and their lives grew even more intertwined. They traveled together for concerts, shared quiet breakfasts, and celebrated small victories like family birthdays or school achievements. Eli's music career continued to blossom, but he never forgot where he came from. Every year, he returned to the orphanage to perform for the children there. He brought instruments, music sheets, and even arranged scholarships for some of them, with Mr. Cole's help. Of course, during one of these visits, a young boy from the orphanage asked him shyly, "Do you ever get scared when you play in front of so many people?" Eli smiled. "Every time," he admitted. "But then I remember something my dad told me. He said, 'You're not there to impress anyone. You're there to share what's in your heart.' And when I think about that, I'm not scared anymore." The boy grinned and said, "I want to play like you someday." Eli handed him a small violin. "Then start today." Watching from the side, Mr. Cole felt an overwhelming sense of pride. He realized that Eli wasn't just making music. He was spreading hope. The same way he once brought light into Mr. Cole's life, he was now doing the same for others. Years later, Eli performed at one of the most prestigious music halls in the country. The audience included famous musicians, critics, and dignitaries. As he walked onto the stage, he paused for a moment to look around. Sitting in the front row as always was Mr. Cole, his hair a little grayer now, his smile the same as ever. Eli began to play. The first song was one he had written himself, inspired by the journey of a lonely man and a little boy who found each other through music. The audience listened in silence, some with tears in their eyes. When the final note faded, the hall erupted with applause once more. After the concert, Eli walked to the edge of the stage and held up his trophy. "This is not just mine," he said softly into the microphone. "It belongs to the person who believed in me when no one else did. He taught me that love and kindness are worth more than anything money can buy. Dad, this is for you." The crowd turned to see Mr. Cole standing, clapping with tears streaming down his face. It was a moment neither of them would ever forget. That night, as they drove home, the car was quiet. The city lights blurred through the windows. Mr. Cole finally said, "Your parents would be so proud of you." Eli smiled. "I think they are. And I think they're happy I found you." Mr. Cole's eyes softened. "No, Eli. I'm the one who found you. You saved me." They both laughed quietly, and for a long moment nothing else needed to be said. Years later, when Eli became a world-renowned musician, he never forgot his beginnings. He built a foundation for young artists, helping children from poor backgrounds chase their dreams. He often said in interviews, music is not just sound. It's a bridge between hearts. Every story he told, every melody he played, carried the memory of a day in the park long ago, when a proud man mocked a little boy, and a simple tune changed both their lives forever. And every time he stepped on stage, he would glance toward the front row, where an old man with kind eyes and a gentle smile still sat, listening with pride, knowing that the richest thing he ever owned was not his wealth, but the boy who called him Dad.